Good afternoon, everybody. It's Carpo here, and I'd like to talk a little bit about following your heart. I'm not sure exactly how else to title the video, so I'll get right to the point. It's, I guess, about more or less the heart doctrine, or the idea of following your heart in life. It's a subject that I've wrestled with in my mind for a long time. I've had times where I said the heart knows best, and there have been times when I've told myself, well, the heart makes mistakes. And so the conclusion that I've come to on how to best live an emotional life is to have what they would call emotional intelligence, which is understanding emotion, and that requires a little bit of every angle, in my opinion. That requires a little bit of an understanding of where religion comes from, as well as why people lean towards extreme atheism, both angles on it. Understanding different political views, different desires within the people for protection, or how altruistic we are, how much we share, and how selfish we are. And my belief is that it has to be an educated decision. So we have to understand our hearts and know when we feel something, and whether or not it's caused by, say, a previous painful experience when we were young. In other words, if we have negative experiences when we're young, then psychologically we will build up a resistance to certain ideas, and often those are really hard to break away from. But I guess what I'm getting at here, you know, to kind of give you an idea of where I'm coming from, I have always been very fascinated with a deeper look into the psyche and understanding where we come from without getting too wrapped up in psychology. Psychology is a very useful tool, but it's just one aspect of understanding ourselves. But I feel like it's very much ignored by a lot of people, as if, well, psychology has just come around recently and they've made a lot of mistakes, and therefore it's pretty much useless, which is nonsense in my opinion. And psychology has something to offer us. We know that certain childhood problems or issues that arise can cause us problems later in life, and we can document these things and reflect it and see it happening over and over and over again. And therefore we've learned that if we're, say, distrustful of people, or perhaps we're violent people, then sometimes we can trace that back to a reason. But why I think this is important is because I think that by default we are happy people. I think that the default mode network of life is happiness, but not happiness as in laughing and jumping around with joy, but rather being content. And for a lot of people, just being content is happiness, because compared to the way a lot of folks live in such misery all the time, just being normal and not having any issues arise can be one of the most useful things. So my belief is that behind every law, or I should say behind every natural law, is the basis for love. And love, not in the term that we use it as in, oh, I love you, or I love this, or I love that, but rather this feeling that we can't really define. Because love cannot be defined by any individual in a way that's sufficient for another to understand how they feel love. There's different loves. There's platonic love for good friends. There's romantic love for partners. Then there's obsessive love for ideas, you know. But love seems to be the emotion that we're looking to pull out of all of this chaos that we live within. Life can seem overwhelming at times. And so the question is this normal? Or is it something that we can actually overcome? Discipline is true love. If you don't discipline your children, then it's a lack of love in a certain regard for that child, in my opinion. It's a laziness of, well, I don't want them to hate me now, so I will make them hate me later, in a way. So discipline of children is one thing, but discipline of the self is just as important. In other words, we discipline ourselves, and you might hate yourself at this moment, like, oh, I don't want to be doing this, but later you know that you took yourself down the right path, if that makes sense. One thing about happiness, and even contentment, is that people will always try to tear down other people's happiness. And maybe this is one of the main reasons why I'm making this video, because during my search for understanding in life, some of the ideas that I've found the most appealing have a lot of resistance from people who those ideas don't even affect. So my example would be, let's say a person finds truth in some spiritual practice, and then another person comes into their video, let's say, or whatever, their blog, whatever they have posted about it, and says, oh, you're totally delusional, and this is nonsense, and, you know, people need to stop believing this crap. A person who feels strongly in their heart enough to understand themselves will say, well, I'm sorry you feel that way, but, you know, hopefully you find something that works for you. But another person may become very, let's just say some of the people who claim to be the most spiritually aware tend to strike back and lash out at others who don't agree with them even more than some of the most hardcore, rude, mean people that I've met. We can sense the demeanor in people. So it's not about what you believe that determines how you act, nor is it about, well, what does determine how strongly we feel about something and whether it's useful in our lives, I guess. Observation is limited. One of the biggest arguments that I've heard for, let's say, come up with any example, flat Earth is a perfect example. And I've heard more than a handful of people say, well, use common sense, look out with your eyes and you can see the Earth appears to be flat. And I've heard this used as an argument, a scientific argument for why the Earth is flat. To say, well, if you don't trust your eyes, then how can you trust anybody else? I think this is a really good metaphor for understanding, you know, it comes up a lot in how we defend ourselves and defend our positions. Is, well, this is the way I see it, literally see it, so therefore it must be true. And no amount of information coming forward will change our opinions on that, because we firmly believe it in our hearts that what we've seen is true. Maybe another example would be somebody who's seen a ghost. There's no real scientific evidence that ghosts exist. It doesn't mean they don't exist. But of all the years I've watched ghost shows, you know, and ghost hunters and all these different, you know, I've always been fascinated by these things. And this is why, I guess, the amount of times that I've been let down as far as evidence to what I want to believe, instead of that allowing me to be distraught or say, whoa, bummer, you know, everybody's lying to me, I started to realize that it's what I wanted to believe. I was creating my own reality. It was very empowering. Okay, there's two viewpoints you can have. If you believe that the world is all evil and everybody's out to get you, then you have an unhealthy mind. If you believe that the world is a good place and that there's just some negative issues to work out, then your mind is healthy. This is a very general statement, and of course, I don't have any evidence for this, nor am I going to try to get into the specifics of why this is true. But each one of us, every one of you out there knows this is true. You know that when you're thinking negative, it means that there's something wrong in your life that you're not addressing. You know, things aren't working out for one reason or another. You can't just say, well, I've had a lot of problems happen to me, therefore I see things negatively. Because even when some of the worst things happen to us, we're able to pull ourselves out of it if we look at it properly. And so everything I'm saying here may just sound like, yeah, whatever, you're just saying, think positive and everything will be fine. And that's the opposite of what I'm saying. I'm saying you have to train yourself to think positively. You have to train yourself to see the good in life and the good in other people. It's something that, and here's where I'm coming from, it's not something we have to train ourselves because we don't have it naturally. It's something that we have to train ourselves to overcome all the bullshit we've been taught when we were young. Don't talk to strangers, and people are dangerous, and you know, money is evil, and people are out to corrupt, and that, you know, all the leaders are out to get you, and everybody's out to conspire against you, and our religion is the best and everybody else sucks, and our political view is the best and everybody else sucks. So if being happy really is the true default mode of life, and we have to discipline ourselves and seek these truths, a lot of folks would say, well, that doesn't work out for everybody. Some people go out and they seek, you know, they seek their happiness this way or that way, and they fail, they die, they get hurt, whatever it might be. And yes, this happens. But the question I would ask is, who can you name who has followed their true hearts and followed their hearts and minds towards something greater and really failed at life? or failed at their goal. The thing is, everything is experience, so nothing's a failure. You don't lose anything by trying. All you do is reveal one more issue that didn't work, one more method that didn't work, and maybe it would work for somebody else. So let's just say you are living your life and you've decided you want to make some changes, and you're like, I want to be a positive thinking person. I want to work towards something greater, or take on a new, mission. I want to follow my heart, follow my dreams. That's a difficult thing to do, but it's not impossible. One of the hang-ups people have is that they think they're too old. And that's something that just has to it just has to go away. It has to be the first thing to go. Ignore time. Time does not matter. It's never too late to begin anything. Some of the greatest things have been created by people who are over and past retirement age, who have said, well, I have to switch modes and do something else, so I'm going to write this book, or, invent this, whatever it might be. And this is something that I think I should expound on a little. We have a lot of these patterns in life of, I go to work, come home, go to work, come home. Perhaps you're a traveler and you travel for a while, then you rest, travel for a while, then you rest. No matter what your patterns are, in time, they will change. And so for me as a parent right now of 3 kids, I've got an older son and then 2 younger kids, 6, 9, and 25, and they're all great kids. But as a parent, I'm in parent mode, constantly and aware that that's what I'm doing, that's what I'm using my heart for, is to raise my kids and to do the best I can. It can be painful, it can be wonderful, but in the end, these kids are going to fly the coop. They're going to go off on their own. And then what am I going to do? Often this is a huge issue for people, and some people live vicariously through their children. Especially those parents who say the dad who never got to make it in sports, so he wants his kid to be a football star, To each his own. But when that kid has gone off to do his own thing, you're going to be back trying to find out your own truth again. And sometimes people even live vicariously, again, through their grandchildren. Maybe they didn't raise their children the way they wanted to, so they end up obsessing over their grandchildren. But eventually those kids grow up and you still have to live your own life. So we're following our hearts by helping other people and by wanting to make family first, which is a very important factor, but we also need to realize that we have to take care of ourselves first. If we're unhappy inside, if we're on the wrong track, it's quickly realized. I think every one of us can admit that. If you start going down the wrong path, you will figure it out quickly. But if you go down the right track, it takes a long time to really see how it's worked out. And so some of us, maybe we're going to delve down into this artistic endeavor or take this job on for a while, and it doesn't give us the instant satisfaction we want. So we think it must not be the right path. And I think it's important that we do. And I'm telling myself this as much as all of you. I'm in the process of trying to find and fulfill my dreams. I want to be a writer. I want to be able to write, edit, and make videos, write books, papers. That's what I like to do. So I'm like, how do I use the tools that I have, the gifts that I have, and make that happen for myself? And I've been struggling. I've been honestly struggling for a long time because I look down on myself for not getting enough done, for not doing what society says to do. I could be successful. I could have a lot of money. I could do all these great things, but I don't. So it's a constant battling between what I've been taught is right and what I believe is right. One thing is negativity towards ourselves or others is not the same as constructive criticism. So constructive criticism can be a very useful tool. If we're not, if we beat ourselves up in the right way, it can help to kick us in the ass to move forward. And the same thing with others around us, but it's very difficult to give a person constructive criticism without thinking that we are berating them or tearing them apart. Sometimes I can come across as a little bit arrogant or a little bit maybe, overbearing in the way that I might even talk to my friends or family, whatever it might be, and I really try to be careful and cautious in the words that I choose. But everything I do is for the sake of love, and that's an important thing. It's not to be better than someone else, or to say, oh, I'm greater than you, or I can get one over on you, or push your buttons, or, you know, be a cooler person, but rather that it's tough love. It's tough love. When those around me do things that I see are obviously silly or, you know, ridiculous, that affect me in some way, then I speak up about it, but do it in a loving way. And others do that to me as well, because I can be a pain in the ass to live with. I can be a pain in the ass to interact with, I'm sure. So maybe that's the biggest thing, is to remember, what are our intentions? Because intention is everything. If a person you love is acting in a way that you don't agree with, but you know their intentions are pure, then it's okay to discuss things with them and say, look, you're on the right track, but your intentions are good, but your execution is horrible. You're tactless in the way you talk. I know several people who are just really tactless. They bring up just the most irrelevant conversations at the weirdest times, and I understand that because that's what's on their mind. And so over the years I've said, well, how can I not do that to other people? Because I've been doing that since I was younger. Like, did you hear about this? Or, hey, did you know this and this and this? And I'll start going off on this subject that they have no idea what I'm talking about. So it's kind of about bringing it back home to, you know, these basic discussions that we can all share. I guess I could go off on, as an example, I could go off on a specific Eastern mysticism and the way they handle understanding the heart, or I could just sit here and talk about generally the heart, and it is what it is, you know. As much as I know my own heart's true and honest and I mean well, I still beat myself up over things, you know. I've got so many different interests. I was a carpenter for years. I could build a house. I love gardening. I can grow wonderful cannabis. I know a lot about herbs. I'm fascinated with science. I write. I make videos. I have all these things I do, but I've never really been that good at like teamwork. And so maybe that's the aspect of it that I need to work on. Say, you know, working with other people in order to accomplish a larger goal. But what I wanted to say about that is that pride is often looked at as, you hear about the pride comes before the fall. Well, pride is often misunderstood because pride is confused with, it's a fear of yourself. Appreciation is not the same thing as pride. So when you do something great and somebody says, wow, that's awesome, I appreciate that, you can have a little pride in that, but it's the appreciation that drives the pride, not the pride that forces the appreciation. So I guess what I'm saying is that we need to look at ourselves very balanced, you know, realize we don't know everything we're talking about, but we're also not complete losers, that the heart does know a little bit of truth, but it can lead us astray. It's always about going back and forth through these extremes, and that's what's I've found works for me. That's why I share this information with you, because I'm hoping you can gain some of the same use out of these tools that I have to understand the heart really does. It really is true that love is this. I'm just going to say love is the answer because it sounds so damn cheesy. Love isn't the answer. Love is the question. And it's how you deal with that question, I guess, that really determines how you're going to live your life. So I'd love to hear all of your input, anybody who has input on these things, because as wide of an idea as it is, I think that love really is not love as, you know, because one thing I wanted to address is love can go too far. Some people are so closed off to love and so fearful of it for loss that they shut themselves down and they won't even develop relationships. But it can go the opposite direction. Some people are just, I love you, and they're obsessively, you know, like clingy, and I can't stand clinginess. So when people say I love you too much, it loses its meaning. Like, no, I save my I love yous for the times when it really matters, but that's me. And so we can go either way. It's about finding that balance, knowing what love means to us, and really making it work for us. Because love and the heart are entwined, regardless of how we feel about, you know, religion or spirituality. When people talk about thinking from the heart, you know, we do have neurons in our heart. We think with our stomachs. We think with our hearts. We know when something's right and wrong. So throwing aside all the bullshit that we've learned, you know, it's like if you say, oh, I can feel it in my heart, some people will say, oh, that's just, you know, that's all in your head. Everything's all in our head. What do we make work for us? Talk to y'all later. Have a wonderful day. Be well. Take care of yourself. Thanks to all my supporters. Thanks to my Patreon supporters. Thank you so much. Thanks to anybody who leaves a comment. Thanks to all of you for putting up with my random ramblings and making this channel enjoyable, because my beard's turned white since I started this channel. It's just crazy how much time passes, and I'm still learning all along with all of you. I'm still as humble as the day when I started, sometimes even more after all the shit that I've had to think of, all the ideas I've thought through, and all the responses people have given that make me really think about it, think about the things that I'm putting out there. And that's why I do this. Because if I put out something that's bullshit, I'm going to hear the response, and I kind of live for that, But ultimately it comes down to what works for you. So, let me know.